A man does not lose himself all at once. He loses himself in small permissions. He loses himself when he answers every impulse, speaks every thought, obeys every desire, and calls it freedom. He believes he is choosing, but slowly, without noticing, he becomes controlled by everything outside him. The man who cannot control himself does not need an enemy. His own habits have already defeated him. In the old world of the samurai, defeat was not always decided by the sharpness of a blade. It was often decided before the sword was ever drawn. A warrior who could be provoked easily, distracted easily, comforted easily, or frightened easily had already exposed the weakness of his spirit. Miyamoto Musashi understood this deeply. To him, victory was not only about striking first, it was about seeing clearly, standing calmly, and refusing to be ruled by what moved weaker men. Musashi wrote that one must not be swayed by desire, regret, anger, or fear. This was not a poetic idea, it was a survival principle. A man who is ruled by emotion becomes predictable. A man who is ruled by comfort becomes soft. A man who is ruled by impulse becomes easy to guide, easy to manipulate, and easy to defeat. The ancient warrior trained the body, but he also trained the space between feeling and action. This is the story of a man named Ren. Ren was not weak in the obvious way. He was not lazy, foolish, or without ambition. From the outside, he looked like a normal man living a normal life. He worked, spoke politely, kept his promises sometimes, and told himself he was doing enough. But inside, he knew there was no ruler within him. There was only noise. Chapter 1. The Invisible Defeat. Ren woke each morning already defeated. Not by an enemy, not by poverty, not by fate, but by the first urge that visited him. He would open his eyes and reach for distraction before his feet touched the floor. One glance became 10 minutes. 10 minutes became an hour. The day had not begun, yet his attention had already been taken from him. He told himself this was harmless. Everyone did it. Everyone needed a little escape before facing the day. But deep within him, there was a quiet shame he could not explain. It was not the shame of one great failure. It was the shame of watching himself break small promises again and again until his own word no longer carried weight. A man's weakness is often hidden in what he excuses. Ren excused his anger because he was tired. He excused his delay because he was busy. He excused his indulgence because life was stressful. He excused his silence when courage was required, and he excused his speech when silence would have been stronger. Slowly, he became a servant to the easiest option. In ancient Japanese discipline, this condition was dangerous. The warrior did not fear discomfort as much as he feared disorder within himself. A disordered man could not be trusted in battle, in leadership, in hardship, or even in solitude. If his inner world was unstable, then every outer pressure would command him. His enemy would only need to touch the right nerve. Ren began to notice this in his own life. A rude comment could ruin his entire day. A delay could poison his mood. A temptation could erase his plans. A small inconvenience could make him abandon his standards. He was not being attacked by great forces. He was being conquered by small ones. Chapter 2. The Lesson of the Unmoved Warrior. One evening, Ren found an old passage about Miyamoto Musashi. It spoke of a man who spent his life refining the way of strategy, not only in combat, but in perception. Musashi did not see the warrior path as something limited to the sword. He saw it as a way of standing in the world without being pulled apart by it. Musashi's Dokodo, the way of walking alone, contains a severe kind of freedom. It teaches detachment from excess desire, from regret, from comfort, from dependence, and from the restless craving for approval. To a modern man, these teachings can sound cold, but they are not cold. They are clear. They ask a simple question: are you the master of yourself, or are you owned by whatever you cannot refuse? Ren sat with this question longer than he expected. He thought of how often he had blamed the world for his lack of peace. He blamed pressure, people, noise, responsibilities, and time. But the deeper truth was more difficult to face. The world did not need to control him directly. It only needed to offer him something he had not trained himself to resist. The samurai understood that control begins before the moment of crisis. A warrior does not become calm when the arrow is already flying toward him. He becomes calm through years of meeting small discomforts without surrendering. He practices restraint when no one is watching. He practices silence when speaking would satisfy the ego. He practices patience when impatience feels justified. Ren realized that he had been waiting for a dramatic transformation, but the warrior path did not begin dramatically. It began with one refusal, one quiet act of command, one moment where the body demanded ease and the mind said no, not with hatred, not with force, but with authority. Chapter 3. The First Rule of Self-Command. The next morning, Ren made one rule. He would not touch his phone for the first hour of the day. It sounded too small to matter, almost embarrassing in its simplicity. But when morning came, the urge rose immediately. His hand reached toward the device before thought had fully formed. For the first time, he saw the habit clearly. It was not a choice, it was a chain. He stopped his hand. The room was silent. Nothing impressive happened. No one praised him. No one knew. But inside, something ancient had awakened. For 1 hour, he sat with discomfort. He washed, prepared his space, drank water, and faced the stillness he had been avoiding. The silence felt heavier than he expected. This is where many men turn back. They think discipline should feel powerful at once. But the beginning of discipline often feels like loss. You lose the easy pleasure. You lose the familiar escape. You lose the false comfort of being constantly distracted. Before discipline gives strength, it reveals how dependent you have become. Ren felt irritated. He felt bored. He felt almost offended by the absence of stimulation. But beneath the discomfort, there was something else. A small firmness. A sense that he had taken back 1 inch of territory inside himself. That inch was not much, but it was his. The Japanese principle of gammon teaches endurance with dignity. Not loud suffering. Not dramatic struggle, quiet endurance. The ability to remain steady under pressure without complaining, collapsing, or making your pain the center of the world. Ren did not understand gammon through reading. He began to understand it through that first hour of silence. Chapter 4. The Enemy. Within the Gate. As the days passed, Ren noticed something strange. The real enemy was not the phone. It was not comfort, food, entertainment, anger, or distraction. These were only doors. The enemy was the part of him that wanted to enter every door immediately. The enemy was the untrained self that believed every feeling deserved obedience. When anger came, Ren began to watch it before speaking. At first, this felt unnatural. He had always believed that expressing anger quickly proved strength, but he began to see that uncontrolled anger made him easy to move. Anyone who could anger him could control his next action. Anyone who could insult him could take command of his mind. Silence became his training ground. Not the silence of weakness, but the silence of possession. He practiced not answering every provocation. He practiced letting foolish words pass without chasing them. He practiced delaying his response until his mind returned to him. This did not make him passive. It made him dangerous in a quieter way. Zen teaches that the mind is like water. When disturbed, it cannot reflect clearly. When still, it sees things as they are. Ren began to understand that most of his mistakes had not come from ignorance. They had come from a disturbed mind. He had answered too quickly, desired too quickly, judged too quickly, and surrendered too quickly. A man who cannot control himself is easy to defeat because he announces his weaknesses through reaction. His cravings reveal where he can be bought. His anger reveals where he can be led. His fear reveals where he can be trapped. His need for approval reveals where he can be shaped by other people's hands. Chapter 5. The Discipline of Elimination. Ren's life did not become perfect. It became simpler. This was more important. He began removing what weakened him instead of adding more methods to improve himself. He stopped searching for new systems and began asking one question. What takes command of me? He noticed certain conversations made him smaller. He noticed certain habits made him dull. He noticed certain comforts stole his edge. He noticed certain pleasures left behind emptiness instead of strength. This was not about rejecting life. It was about refusing to be consumed by things that gave pleasure while taking power. The way of the warrior is often a way of subtraction. Musashi warned against attachment because attachment clouds judgment. The more a man believes he cannot live without something, the more power that thing holds over him. What he cannot release becomes a handle by which the world can drag him. Ren began to remove one weakness at a time. He did not announce it. He did not turn discipline into performance. He simply made private agreements with himself and kept them. A fixed waking time. A period of silence. A difficult task completed before comfort. A refusal to explain himself to those who only wanted to distract him. With each small act, his identity changed. Not loudly, not instantly, but steadily. He began to trust himself again. This trust was not confidence built on praise. It was confidence built on evidence. He had seen himself resist. He had seen himself endure. He had seen himself remain still when the old self wanted to run. Chapter 6. The Man Who Becomes Difficult to Defeat. Months later, Ren faced a moment that would once have broken his composure. Someone insulted him publicly, in a way designed to provoke. The old Ren would have answered instantly. He would have defended himself with heat, raised his voice, and lost command of the room by trying to win it. But this time, something different happened. He felt the anger rise. He did not deny it. He did not pretend to be above it. He simply did not hand it the sword. He breathed, looked at the person calmly, and answered only what needed to be answered. No extra words, no performance, no wound disguised as strength. The moment passed, and for the first time, Ren understood what power felt like when it did not need to announce itself. This is the quiet strength ancient warrior philosophy points toward. Not the strength of domination, but the strength of self-possession. The world may still bring insult, pressure, temptation, loss, and uncertainty. But the trained man does not collapse into every feeling. He does not become a puppet of circumstance. He stands inside himself like a guarded fortress. The man who controls himself becomes difficult to defeat because he gives little away. He does not reveal his center through panic. He does not sell his attention cheaply. He does not trade his standards for momentary comfort. He does not need the world to be gentle before he becomes steady. This is not perfection. Even the disciplined man feels desire, anger, fear, and doubt. The difference is that he no longer mistakes these visitors for masters. They may enter the mind, but they do not sit on the throne. He has trained the space between impulse and action, and in that space, his freedom lives. Conclusion: return to yourself. A man does not become strong by conquering the world first. He becomes strong by conquering the small disorder within him. The urge to delay, the urge to react, the urge to escape silence, the urge to choose comfort when duty is waiting. These are not small things. They are the battlefield where the self is either lost or reclaimed. Ancient Japanese wisdom does not ask you to become hard for the sake of hardness. It asks you to become clear, to remove what weakens judgment, to endure what strengthens character, to stop obeying every passing desire as if it were a command, to live in such a way that your own word becomes law within you. The man who cannot control himself becomes easy to defeat. But the man who learns to pause, endure, eliminate, and return to stillness becomes something rare. He becomes less available to manipulation, less dependent on comfort, less frightened by silence, less controlled by the world around him. Begin with one rule: keep it quietly. Let it be small, but let it be absolute. Do not explain it. Do not decorate it. Do not turn it into an identity for others to admire. Simply keep it until your spirit remembers what command feels like. In the end, self-mastery is not a grand speech. It is the private moment when impulse rises and you do not bow. It is the silence before reaction. It is the task completed without applause. It is the calm gaze of a man who has stopped being ruled by what once defeated him. And when a man returns to himself in this way, he becomes very difficult to conquer.